That was the smoothest start that we've had in a while.
I know.
I would say. Like,
and we've been gone for a week, and I've been like.
That was
really
pretty like just right in there.
I love it. Thank you for the props. Graphite Avatar, first time chat. Welcome in. Thanks for joining us. We're returning after taking a week off that felt like a million years long, and we've missed you all so much. So thanks for being here. Hi, Darukin. How's it
felt
going?
like a while. A lot longer than it has.
I didn't realize we're on
been.
the strobe effect, and I feel like that's not...
Oh, we're just gonna let this one play out?
I guess so. Hold on. Oh no. See, this is what happens. When I've been off for a week, I'm like, I need to pick...
We need to pick a color and stick with it. We're going with a nice blue, light blue.
Yeah. All right, so forgive us for our little stumbles and bumbles.
Having some tea today.
Cheers. Welcome in. Happy Thursday.
Cheers.
We are so excited to have a new synth friend to hang out with. We, like we say, anyone can leave at any time. We're just hanging out, seeing if
anyone can leave at any time.
Yeah. It's a no pressure chat, and we want you to participate.
That needs to be said.
So we're gonna hang and chat with René, a new synth friend, and get to know him and his music, and his synth origin story. And you can ask questions as we're hanging out. So welcome in. If this is your first time at Synth Friends, please let us know. We're so happy you're here. Make sure to give us a follow as well, so we can stay connected.
Or not. It's up to you.
I mean, sure. No pressure. It's just the way. It's like if people are like, oh, what should I do? It's like, give us a follow. That's great.
We'd prefer it. I mean, I would certainly prefer it.
I mean, only if you're a cool person, which you probably are.
Come join our world.
All right. We're going to bring René on and start this conversation. And make sure that we have our tech set up. I think we do. All right. Welcome in, René. Our synth friend for this week. Thank you for joining us. Can we all hear and see and...
Welcome.
Everything working for everybody out there in the chat? Let us know.
No, I see Todd there. Look.
Right off the bat, we see a friend.
I have these right here from the last time he came over.
Oh, so I would imagine a physical proximity is potential, or just passing through adventures.
I think he was just in town. Yeah.
Oh, right, because you're based in LA, right?
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, obviously, right off the bat, we got some Buchla questions.
Yeah, my Buchla is a little dismantled at the moment, but
no.
Well, it's just I sent my Marf back to Adam Scramstad, who built it for me.
Yes.
To install the new firmware and all that stuff. And so I recently got a little easel case from Luther. He does like the vintage looking with the blue and all that stuff. So
Adam
I'm just
Scramstad, we're definitely going to get on here.
Oh, yeah.
He's a mutual friend, it seems. So yeah, we're getting him on here.
Yeah, people need to know about Adam for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'd say like 80% of this case is his builds.
Oh wow,
So,
heck of a builder. I mean, he's such a talented guy that I actually sometimes forget that he even builds modules, because he does so many other things, like...
That's true.
Yeah.
And he's a hell of a module builder, like he's like probably I would say, arguably the best Buchla module guy, out there.
Yeah.
Definitely like the best reputation. And
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've had zero complaints with his builds. They're all like super top notch. And he's also like the nicest person ever too.
Exactly.
Totally. Yeah. So we'll have to get him on here. We've discussed it, loosely. So I think it's gonna happen.
The Buchla strain of Synth Friends just keeps growing.
Nice.
Anywho, so one of the questions we love to ask is like, what's your synth origin story? Like synth specific. I know some people have like a music journey they've been drawn to, but specifically synths. I'm always curious, like, at what age you really sort of locked into that.
Well, I'm a toddler when it comes to synths in that sense, because I ever since I started doing some form, like incorporating electronic elements, I use soft synths for the most part, and like probably Omnisphere was kind of like the thing that I always had in the background.
Mm.
But it was always just kind of preset based and just kind of like, kind of like how producers look for the right kick or the right snare sound. I would go through Omnisphere trying to find the right preset to be like, okay, this kind of works with what I'm doing.
Gotcha.
Um, but I'd say around maybe like 2017, um, I had been working the previous 3 years for another composer here in LA, as his assistant and additional composer in his team. And my job for those 3 years was literally to sound like him. And
Oh, okay.
so once I kind of started going off on my own and pursuing my own projects, I was like, all right, well, I need to figure out how to sound like me now, because I can't go
Ooh.
around scoring projects still sounding like my Xbox, so to speak. Um, and that was kind of when I knew, like, on the stuff that I had been working for him before. We were doing a lot of like software synthesizers and I was getting more and more into it, but it was, TV is so fast paced that I
Mm.
didn't really have the time to learn it. And it was still just kind of like load a preset, tweak a few things and make it sound new. And then when I was going off on my own and starting from like indie projects and things like that that were lower budget and had more time and that kind of stuff, I decided to just kind of like go for it and be like, all right, if I want to make electronics and synthesizers like be part of my sound as a composer, then I gotta commit and actually learn what I what I'm doing. So I just picked up a Mother 32, which was kind of like the closest thing. In terms of like, because I knew I had been curious about the modular thing, but I didn't have the confidence or the know-how to just go for it right away. So I was like, I still want to have this safety net of just like I can power it on and press a key and it'll make a sound.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
and so, that's kind of and then once I just drove to, I think it was like Sam Ash or Guitar Center or one of those stores and just picked it up and brought it home. And I was working on a project and I had been feeling a little stuck. And so as soon as I powered it on and I heard that ladder filter like, and it was like, oh, okay, this sounds very different than my
That was the
software
hook.
synthesizers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean it was kind of like a shock too, because it was like, where are the presets? How do I how do I make a sound here? And so one thing I've always really appreciated about Moog is like the depths of their manuals and their documentation that they include with their instruments. It's so like it was perfect for me because it explained absolutely everything and what everything did just from like basics, no assumptions that you knew what you
Mm-hmm.
were getting into,
It's kind
and
of
that
the
was like
opposite
really.
of Buchla, I would
Oh,
say.
for sure. Yeah, totally. Well, the funny thing was that, being who I am, once I spent a few months with the Mother 32, I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing now. And so my next purchase was a mescaline from Folk Tech, which is like super like hieroglyphics and you have no clue what's going
Yes.
on. Um, and of course, that was very overwhelming really quick. But I just think like once I got a taste of that, and then once I started patching the semi-modular, the patch bay of the Mother 32, it kind of like really hooked me into Eurorack basically. And so I ended up getting a little case, throwing the Mother 32 on it. I think the first module after that I got was a Morphogene because I
Mm.
wanted to like splice and do glitchy stuff.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
then it just started growing from that. And I spent the next maybe like 2 or 3 years, just like really diving into Eurorack and expanding. Um, and it immediately became just part of my sound. And what I love about it to this day is that it I can literally do anything in terms of like, and that's kind of how I built my studio in terms of like, because of the work that I do in film music, TV music, that kind of stuff, I have to be able, like, my main interest is versatility. And so I need to, whenever I think of a sound that I want, I have to look around my studio and I need to have the right tool to do it. And that's kind of how I've approached my practice and my collection, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So, at first it was just mainly Eurorack, and I was trying to cram my Eurorack case to do everything I could, but then I slowly started realizing I was like, it's not really practical unless I want to end up with like a huge wall. And I just feel like there are
Mm.
other things that do it, you know, I just feel like for me, I just feel like each instrument or, you know, I don't know, manufacturer or whatever you call it, like does something really well. And
Yeah. Is
even
that a
though you
Eurorack
can,
behind you? I mean, not that, if there was an
Synth
audio only
review.
stream happening, no one would see, but like, is
yeah,
that directly behind you, like a Eurorack?
right. So
Mm-hmm.
here
Okay.
over my left shoulder, right. So I have my Eurorack case and then a smaller little unit here, which is just one row of
Okay.
also more Eurorack.
More
Mm-hmm.
Eurorack. Okay.
So this case now, I've focused it more on sound processing, which I feel like for me is what I love doing with Eurorack the most, is just like sending it audio, external audio, and then using filters or distortions or like things like the Rossum panharmonium
Mm-hmm.
or like the Bark filter from Verbose, which obviously I ended up having the 296 here, but I still keep that one over there. And like Data Bender is something that I use a ton from Qubit. Just things that, like I said, help me take acoustic sounds and then just like turn them into textures or things like that. And I mean, I still keep a small selection of oscillators,
Mm-hmm.
but it's mainly focused on digital oscillators. I mean, I still have the Verbose harmonic oscillator here because I don't have the Buchla version of it, so I that's my
There you
only
go.
analog oscillator in the Eurorack.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
then
what a
here
good
I
one. I've
have,
heard really good things about that. I've never tried one myself, but I've heard really good
yeah,
things.
I love it. I mean, for me, it's great in terms of like again creating textures and drones and like evolving, the different harmonic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right next to it, I have a Laquella Guitaritas from Noise Engineering, which I just love them and their company, and like I have a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
like effects and utilities from them.
They make
And
plugins
then
now, right?
yeah, their plugins are really cool.
Yeah, I've actually been pretty interested in the idea of. When I heard they were making plugins, I haven't checked into them yet, but at
Yeah,
least
I
piqued my
used
Mm-hmm.
I
interest.
I used to the Desmodus and the Ruina plugins a lot on my stuff, and I have the modules in Eurorack, but sometimes it's easier to just pull it
Yeah,
up and
I
definitely.
mean, yeah, if you're dealing with something that's DSP based, it
right.
actually, I'd rather run it at 96K in my DAW.
Right, right.
So, yeah.
Um, yeah, and so I think the only other oscillator that I have, well, I have two more, the Piston Honda for wavetable synthesis because I don't really have any other synth in my studio, like hardware that does wavetables.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the a Platts just like as a macro oscillator to give me whatever other sort of sound I could need in terms of generating. And then the rest are like analog filters or, sound processing modules, analog distortions or whatever. And then here at the bottom, I have a little like percussion rack, like a mini system. It's got a Varigate 8 with a Pico drums for kicks and then a Folk Tech Matter for like all sorts of glitchy percussion and little bloops and bleeps stuff, followed by a Lyra 8 effects.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Yeah.
And so yeah, so then my URAC kind of became that, and for a time, if I'm having hardware gear, I tend to lean more towards analog. Again, similar to your comment about like, well, if it's going to be digital, I might as well just have it in the computer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I got at one point I got a Moog One. I just went for it, and I was like, oh, I like my Mother 32 and my DFM. I'll just get a Moog One because I can do everything there. But then as soon as I started it, I just came into it with the wrong expectations.
Mm.
And then I maybe had it for like a month or two before I sold it. And then once I sold it, I bought like a Box 11 5U modular
Mm-hmm. I'm
from
curious though,
.com.
why, like, what about it did you like and dislike?
So
Moog one?
the Moog one had, my favorite thing about it was that it probably had the deepest mod matrix I had ever used.
Okay.
Um, in competition for me with the Pro 3 from Sequential, which I got after um, the Moog one and then later sold it as well. Um, but the thing that I didn't necessarily like in terms of preferences, I felt like the envelopes were a little squishy for my taste. They weren't as snappy as the DFAM or the Mud 32 or any of their other like mono synths, which is what I thought it was going to be. It was going to be like, oh, I'll have 16 mono synths in one, you know? um, but it
Interesting.
just, and
Yeah.
that was just like my ignorance, you know, in terms of like approaching an instrument with the wrong expectations as opposed to taking it what it was, which was like a polyphonic synthesizer with the Moog sound, you know, because obviously the filters and everything sounded great. But to me, the thing that really just made me sell it was that it felt more like either a performer's instrument because of the tri-timbral qualities and you could like stack things up, where I don't do that. I just do one layer at a time, even on my Eurorack, on my Buchla or whatever, because I need that individuality of layers in my work. And also it felt, if not a performer's instrument, then it felt like a producer's instrument where you could spend all the time you needed dialing in the sound you were after and going deep into the mod matrix to get it. Whereas I usually need to work at a pretty fast pace. So not having that immediacy of being able to access the things I needed to and having to just kind of like menu dive. Um, it was just not, it was just not working out, and for the price point and the amount of space it was taking up, it was just like you know. And so in my mind I was like, if I sell this, I can get a 5U modular case, I can get a Pro 3, and I can get back my Ref 2 from, you know, Dave Smith, which was my analog polyphonic synth that I had before. And so that's what I did. I sold it and I bought those things. And with the approach that like the .com system was going to give me a close Moog sound while keeping the modular approach to it and the punchiness of it, that the Pro 3 would give me another like keyboard analog monophonic synth for, again, more of that punch. But also I found the Pro 3 like incredibly deep in terms of the sound design possibilities as well, with the mod matrix and all that stuff. And then the Ref 2 would just be my pad generator, so to speak, you know, in terms of like just traditional polyphonic synth stuff, whether it was keys or pads or whatever. And
Did
then
you
after
like
a
the
few years,
sound? Did you like the sound quality of that better than the Moog One for doing pads? Or
the
do you?
Ref
I should
2,
say, do you?
yes,
Yeah. Do you like it?
yes, yes. And only because for me, the Ref 2 does not have uh, an identifiable sound. It's more malleable, it's more versatile for me, in my opinion. Whereas the Moog One definitely has a sound, and I think it aims to sound like vintage polysynths, you know? So it's like if that's your thing and that's what you're after, like a synth that can mimic all the 80s synths and that kind of stuff, then yes, you're gonna love it. But for me, when it was like, I want something more nuanced that's hard to identify and I can just like sneak it in a track without calling attention to itself, then that's why I still have the Ref 2 and not the Mode 1 in that sense.
That's pretty specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. That's what everybody always says. And when everybody comes to me, when anyone comes to me with like, "Hey, what synth should I get?" I was like, "It's so personal. It's like
Yeah.
it's so personal in terms of what you
Yeah.
need and what you want."
I certainly
And you
agree
know,
with you there. Yeah,
yeah,
I say that all the time too, you know, like you really just gotta experiment until you find what really clicks with you, you know, and
Yeah.
I go through different seasons even where I'm like doing different types of music, you know, and it seems like I
Yeah.
make decisions where I'll sell something that I'm using for a particular type of project. And then of course when I come back around to doing that style again, I'm like, oh man, I miss the whatever, you know. So
Yeah.
the cycle that you describe, it sounds familiar even, you know, in a different context, you know, for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it just never ends because it's like to further that point, I then sold the 5U and the Pro 3 and got a Mini Moog Voyager XL, which kind of like I got the XL version because it has the patch points. You know, I still get some modular elements to it. It's obviously a Moog sound, whereas I feel like with the .com, I was kind of like wanting it to sound like the Moog sound, and it gets pretty close. But when I started playing the Voyager, it was like, okay, this is again the same feeling I had when I played the Mother 32 for the first time. It was like this was the sound I was looking for, you know.
Right, right.
And I do like, I feel like sometimes I miss the depth of the mod matrix from the Pro 3. But what I did was I sold it to my assistant basically for a pretty cheap price. So that way it's kind of still in the family to some extent. So it's
There you
like,
go.
you know, and he has all my presets installed in it still. So it's like whenever we work on projects together, I can just be like, hey, load this preset up. And, you know,
Speaking of
um,
projects, I feel like this would
yeah.
be an excellent
Love a
segue
segue.
into talking about your most recent project, which, you know, I think I found very exciting, and I think others will as well, which is composing the score for the Watchful Eye TV show.
Yeah, that was a crazy few months. And it's crazy to like think about it because we worked on that from like May through September of last year. So it
Oh,
feels like a long time ago. And it's,
wow.
you know, now it's like when it's being talked about and stuff.
Right, yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was nuts. It was like the craziest 5 months I've had of work. But it was also the most exciting. It was my first like TV show as like me being the composer for it. Um,
Wow. Well,
and
congratulations, by the way.
thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
congrats.
you. Yeah, no, it was pretty cool. And I mean, part of what made it so cool was that you know, they kind of hired me for me, you know, in the sense of like I was able to provide a demo, you know, like a pitch that like really spoke to who I was as who I am as a composer, but also
Wow.
like spoke to the story and the world they were trying to build. So much so that it ended up being the end credits of the show, you know.
Wow.
And it was cool because I kind of came on early on, and so they didn't have any sort of like temp music or anything like that already pre-baked into the show.
Oh,
So
that's
I was
nice.
just, yeah, I was just being sent like, hey, we shot this scene today. Here's a rough cut of it. Can you just do your thing, kind of thing?
Wow. So that
Um,
process, I'm so curious about that because I imagine you said this is kind of the first time you've had this type of experience. So you're saying that they were filming and sending you the dailies and having you create
well,
like
yeah, I
scene
mean,
by scene.
it wasn't dailies. And I mean, so just to clarify, like it was my first like TV show where I'm the composer, but like I've done, you know, I did a movie
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Amazon before that, and
I guess what
when
I
I
meant, right, is like something like you said that like doesn't have any preconceived notions about what it is. You're getting to be the
right,
composer and like you're in like the production is happening and you're part of the team. Like that
right,
sounds really exciting.
yeah. So that was kind of like a first, and the way what I find funny with TV is that they'll have like maybe three or four editors working on the show, and it's like they each like stagger episodes, whereas I'm just one composer trying to catch up with
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, totally.
um
Wow.
and but you know, part of the benefit of starting early on is that there was a bit more time. I think we maybe spent like 1 or 2 months on the first 2 episodes, but then
Mm.
that meant the other 8 were like super cramped. Um,
Right.
but it was really cool to explore. And from early on, I also had like the one thing, one of the many things I love about doing this is that I get to hire synth friends as well. So it's like I have this friend from Australia. His name's Adam Ritchie. He goes by R Domain. Um, and I had him making me some like plum butter sounds from Chad Lombard or things like that. And then I hired Joseph Holiday, who goes by Snakes of Russia, also to do like some sounds for me, and Benjamin Howell, who's this other like really great synth guy. Um, so we were all just kind of like in the kitchen, so to speak, like coming up with sounds, and then I was just kind of like figuring out how to compose with those sounds and create the score. But it was really freeing in that they were really open to me experimenting with the sound and not really tied to like, oh, it needs to sound like your regular soapy drama, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Particularly I feel like because Freeform is like a younger skewing network, like their most of their audience is like younger, so
Oh,
they
cool.
want to keep the sound fresh and things like that, which
Yeah.
you know, obviously I'm all
Mm.
for.
I was gonna say I feel
um,
like the genre aspect and then also the audience aspect lend itself to this sound that you're gonna bring to the table, which is really cool.
yeah, yeah, and so yeah, I mean, it was just like really like a dream come true in terms of like the music and the canvas that I got to write the music for and stuff like that. Like I said,
And
the only thing it was just like really intense in terms of like the time and like how fast paced everything was. And fortunately, I had like that team that I mentioned, those friends like making sounds for me, and my assistant also helping me with the admin stuff, and eventually like helping me with cues and whatnot.
Heck
Just
yeah.
because there's no way I would have been able to make it happen because it was, you know, at times we were getting picture lock like five. I just had like 5 or 6 days to turn around a whole episode or things like that, and it was just like super stressful.
Wow.
um, and I just feel like with sound designing and stuff, you really want to take your time and be like, oh, it's just, you know, and then you suffer the the hypnoticness of it, where it's like you're making
Yes.
a patch and you're like, oh, this is so cool. And then you're like, oh crap, I just lost 3 hours just listening to this dumb thing drone, you know? So
it's
yeah.
easy
Oh
to
my
do.
gosh.
It's easy to do.
The power of the synth compels us. I feel
Yeah.
like this idea of wanting to take more time but having real world deadlines, like we've literally just been talking about this today, so that's just crazy that we're getting to kind of swirl around that idea. Like
Yeah.
how do you deal with that like internal pressure to want to like take more time or be able to do things that just like time will not allow? Like, do you have processes that make that easier for you, or I don't know, a mantra?
Um, no, honestly, it's just the pressure of knowing that if I don't deliver on time, I lose my job. It's
That's all you need.
that's kind of yeah, that's like deadlines are like I thrive on deadlines and I lose myself without it, you know.
Yeah.
It's just because of that thing. It's like I'm very detail oriented and and it's hard. It's hard to be like, all right, this is good enough, get it out the door, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like it could have been so much better, you know. But it's like that's just kind of like the nature of the game
Mm-hmm.
and that's why
The
I
irony.
I know.
because yeah, well,
It's so hard.
I feel like to do this job of writing music specifically for TV, it's like you kind of have to be okay with thinking of yourself as a craftsman more than like an artisan, so to speak, you know?
Ooh, yes.
Um, because I feel like if you want to do the artist thing, then do the artist thing, you know? But you have to be okay and you have to like detach yourself emotionally from your compositions if you're working in media, just mainly also because it's not you're not making it for yourself. You
Yeah.
know, that you're making it to fulfill somebody else's vision, and that may not always align exactly with what your vision of the best version of that is, you know.
Ooh,
So.
yeah, that's some deep stuff.
Yeah. I'm seeing my buddy Kyle in the chat.
Oh, Kyle, welcome in, Dark Sparkler.
Only outing you because you've been on the show there, buddy. But
we got a question here.
He said, yeah, he's got a question.
And hello, everyone. We see you all. I'm trying to keep up with the chat, too. You can see
it, right, Renee?
I think that's...
Yeah,
we're definitely taking questions.
Do you mind taking that one?
Howdy, all friends.
She says, did you develop character themes that you could come back to and riff on several times? Yeah, throughout the season, 100%. We have a soundtrack out for it, by the way.
Yeah, here are the links,
and so
everybody.
if you listen to the score, to the soundtrack, you'll catch up on those themes. But yeah, basically the way we approach themes, again, because it was more of like a sound designy approach, and not so much like a traditional, like, oh, here's a melody thing for you. There were some melodic components, and I typically used keys for that. Like a piano will come through every now and then and will give you like a recurring theme. It's kind of ghostly and things like that.
I was gonna say nothing more chilling than hearing a piano when the score is mostly electronic. You're like, something bad is coming.
But then I also used some loops that were just more like electronic phrases or loops or just textures that would repeat themselves, and I used them strategically.
Ooh.
for certain things, like when our main character Elena would usually like snoop around and try to be sneaky. There was this like recurring thing on the plum butter that like you would hear it most every time when that would happen. And because the cast was so varied, like there was, I mean, you have like your main character, so to speak, but there's like 10 other characters who play as big of a role on the show. I was able to develop like small identities, like small sonic identities for each of them. And it was fun when I would get to like pull that out and like highlight it on certain, in certain times. But one of the bigger characters that kind of like established the sound of the show really was the building itself, because the show takes place in this like super old haunted Manhattan apartment building,
Nice.
That's owned by a rich family and stuff like that. And so
sorry, we're getting splashed with a resub, which is actually a 1-year anniversary subscriber that just happened. So I know you may not be able to see the live video, but there's a big splash of love happening on the screen. Not to interrupt you, but welcome in Danielle, who is our moderator. Thank you for being here and for your 1 year of subbing. That is so cool. Welcome in, friends. I see you, Hero of Skyrim, as well.
Talk about making an entrance.
Yeah, there's a big entrance happening here. So that's the joy of Twitch. It's very interactive. So.
Nice.
So yeah, I love the idea that like, the building is a character that has a sonic identity as well as the characters themselves, like you were saying, and like nothing better than like a spooky old Manhattan building, right? So like what what elements did you find worked best for that?
So for that, I mean, something that I usually try to bring into my scores, which I very intentionally decided to make part of my identity as a composer, is my identity as a Puerto Rican as well. And like I usually try to bring some elements of my upbringing and the music from Puerto Rico and how I incorporate that. And I usually have to be like super subtle about it, because I don't want things to suddenly be like, why does it sound like a Latino score? It's like, it's not, So I used a Puerto Rican drum that's usually used in like folk music, one of the kinds of folk music. It's called a barril de bomba, and it's similar to a conga in how you think of it, in the sense that it's like wood with like some sort of skin. I don't remember exactly what type of skin it is. And you just play it with your hands typically, and it comes from like African roots and that kind of stuff.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But the way that I used it on the show was with the like a rubber ball mallet. They're like these little, it's like a little rubber ball on a stick, and you just glide it across different
Oh.
drums or things like. I think I can. Let me see. I mean, they're
Ooh,
pretty
we love a
common.
prop.
Yeah, so like these little balls, they're like I said, they're pretty common. It looks like a lollipop.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be a Synth Friends without at least one show and tell.
I was
So
gonna
thanks
say
for
Ice Lucas, who we had on recently,
thanks
had
for
the
showing
same
this
type of
thing.
mallet. Remember?
Yeah,
That was his
that's
prop
right.
as well. Was one of those mallets.
It's
Yeah,
a
like
popular one.
they're pretty common. They're usually used on like gongs or very large. When you think of them in percussion, like they're used a lot in like gongs or cymbals or like a
So
timpani or things like that,
dragging.
very large,
Okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and so that, and then that just created a sound that when I processed it and I pitched it down, it sounded kind of like a building groaning, almost like
Oh.
kind of thing.
Oh.
And so like putting that in under like other kinds of textures, I don't know, just gave it a sonic identity like I was talking about, and would become a recurring theme.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that I used, I just feel like the ghosts and the building were somewhat hand in hand.
Yes.
And so I love the theremin. I love the Owen Martenot, but I don't have either of them, and I find them very cumbersome to play the
Oh
way
yeah.
that I would like to play them, because I
Absolutely.
would not want to play a theremin quantized, and I don't have the time to like learn all the positions to play it. So I ended up getting a ribbon controller, which really
Oh.
kind of did the trick for me. And I'll try to do another quick show and tell part here.
Another favorite is a
But
ribbon
basically,
controller.
I just
Love it.
have it here, and so I use it with the Voyager. Um,
Amazing.
and basically, with that, I was able to do kind of like theremin like sounds, but that also weren't a theremin, because I feel like too, like Loki, Natalie Holt used the theremin for Loki, the Marvel score. It's like
It
I
has
also
it.
try to not
Yeah.
like piggyback too much on what
Right.
other people are doing, and try to do my own thing, even though obviously like I am inspired by certain things. But really what drove me to that, was initially the show wanted, like, it was branding itself, and to some extent I think it still is, as a contemporary Hitchcockian thriller.
Oh
And
yes, I love that.
what they meant by that, or what I interpreted by that, and I was specifically told, it was like, we don't want it to sound like a Hitchcock movie. We don't want you to go all like Bernard Herrmann on us.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more so like, we want to get that feeling that a Hitchcock movie gives you in terms of the creepiness and whatnot. Um,
And for our
and
sci-fi fans, Bernard Herrmann also did the score for Fahrenheit 451, if I'm not mistaken, based on the Ray Bradbury novel
Yeah, there's a
of the
lot of
same
threads
name.
here, and I feel like that it's very exciting.
Brilliant composer.
so
I mean, obviously the Hitchcock stuff is amazing.
Right, because it's all about the suspense of it. It's not so much the gore of it or anything like that.
yeah, but then funnily enough, what inspired me the most was something I discovered on The Birds, which does not have a score per se by Herman,
Mm-hmm.
but it did have Oscar Sala and the Tritonium doing a bunch of
Right.
sounds, and like he basically did all the sounds for The Birds on the
Mm-hmm.
Tritonium, and I had never heard of the Tritonium before. And so
Mm-hmm.
with that idea of like the thing, um
Yes.
I was like, well, I guess the ribbon controller is like the closest thing I can get to that.
So cool.
And before I had the Voyager, I bought a subharmonicon with the
Mm.
ribbon controller, and I was trying to treat it using the different voices as a Tritonium for things like that, and I managed to use it for a little bit. but then I realized I was mostly just using it as a single voice, and so I was like, well, I guess the subharmonica is not really coming into play the way that you would traditionally treat a tritonium. It just wasn't really, you know, coming into play on the show. And so I just stuck with the single voice, kind of like theremin, like tritonium / on where no treatment of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were some of the things. I mean, I also I keep this handy all the time, like an electromagnetic field recorder.
Oh, yes.
So basically it just,
This is
it
that
just
Kesha stuff. That
records.
ghost show, ghost hunting.
Oh yeah, right. The special equipment.
So
It's
this
always
is just kind of
audio
like
equipment. You're like, okay.
this is called an Electro Slush 3 Plus. I don't know. I bought this from Skylar. I don't know his last name. He goes by Kitty Spit on Instagram. He worked at Noisebug for a while.
Nice.
This basically picks up electromagnetic fields and so I would go all around my studio being like, and it just picks up the the electric sounds. And so I just created textures out of that, just again to add unique flavors to
it's very
things.
ghost adjacent vibes here,
Right.
Like, this is
Because
all
and because
related.
what inspired me to do that was that a lot of times, you associate a presence with the flickering of lights or electricity kind of like being interrupted or things like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like a good sonic equivalent of it.
Heck yeah.
So to speak.
Absolutely, yeah.
I
Like,
love this.
The pieces of the score that I've heard, which is I think most of it at this point, there's like I hear a lot of that. I hear like filtered noise like being used to great effect,
a lot.
to musical effect, in my opinion. Like
love that.
Yeah.
It's really nice. Like I
yeah,
just
yeah.
thought you did a
I'm a
terrific
big
job.
fan of that. Thank you. Yeah,
you,
no, and the
you made the
noise...
synth sound so like musical, like like I was listening to like ways of it being used that just I hadn't heard before, and thought that there was just a lot of really unique stuff being
there's
done.
obviously a lot of intention behind it,
and I listen to a lot of synthesizer stuff, so.
Yeah, right.
And that's something I like personally struggle with when I try to make my own music, because I'm obviously also like very inspired by like all these contemporary composers and electronic music pioneers, and most of their music is not very musical,
Right.
And then when I want to make music like that, I struggle really hard because I default to making musical things, and then it's like then I'm stuck on a loop, and it's like I don't want to do this. But you mentioned the filter noise, and like I can never like go without saying that one of my biggest influences on film music and music in general are Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross of Nine Inch Nails, and I feel like to me they're kind of like the kings of filtered noise and for textures and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Who would have thought? It's a wild world we're living in. But I definitely feel like there has been I feel like because of them getting such accolades for their work, like I'm pretty sure they have like Oscars and stuff at this point.
Yeah. Their first score for The Social Network.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I was thinking of. It blew the doors off, I feel like, for this everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a gradual thing.
Yeah. Well, I found it super interesting too when they did Watchmen on HBO.
Ooh,
it was basically
so
as if Nine Inch Nails was scoring the show.
Yeah.
It sounded just like a bunch of Nine Inch Nail tracks. Which again, I as a Nine Inch Nail fan, I was
like that's great.
That's rad.
That score was amazing. Like I agree, it was probably one of my favorites, so far. Like,
yeah, that show really stays with you as well.
Yeah, all around, pretty good performance. But
yeah, you're right. Like this idea that there's even like modern influences to draw from is
Yeah, and I feel like
mind-blowing.
that's always kind of tricky because
Hmm.
uh, I think like if you draw inspiration from like I don't know 30, 40, 50 years ago, there's more leeway of being like, oh yeah, that's an homage to this or that, you know. But if you're drawing inspiration from scores that are just like 2 or 3 years old, it's like, careful there.
Hmm.
Right, right.
So there
Yeah.
has to be a lot of intention in terms of like it's one thing to like make sure that you steer clear of any sort of copyright or any sort of like but then it also gets even trickier when
Mm.
you're talking about like electronic scores and sound designy texture based score because it's like if you get a Voyager and you press the D key going like you know it's like well, it's gonna sound just like that. So it's like, is that copyright, you know, or does it have
Ooh.
to be like
Mm.
you know, and so it kind of like there's things you want to do, but you're unsure whether you can do them or not. And then it's like, I better be safe because I don't want to lose all my paycheck to a lawsuit later on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Wow. That's a whole other way of thinking about creating too. Like
Hmm.
we talk about
Yeah.
how to set up limitations for yourself when you're
Hmm.
creating in this way where the possibilities are infinite. And already you've got like, if you're working on a project like this, there's already like a lot of people with input and there's deadlines and stuff. But then when you add in this idea of like, it has to be this, there's like this element, right, when you're creating for pictures, that there's like some things, like you said, that are going to trigger familiarity
Hmm.
in terms of like you want the audience to get this cue, right, from the
Sure. Yeah.
music,
Right.
but like you don't want it to be rote, and you don't want you want to be creative within, like there's just like
Yeah.
there's so many
Especially
limitations.
especially with television, and I feel like network television in particular, there are a lot of, you know, I don't want to say tropes or cliches because I feel like those have negative and
Sure,
you
sure.
know, but there are a lot of traditions, so to speak,
Hmm, that's a
that
great
one
word, there you go.
has to somewhat like adhere to. And I actually love some of them and like they like one that just happens all the time and when you don't do it, you typically get a note asking for it. Is this kind of like ramp out when you're going to commercials or when the show is ending the episode or something, you need to like build that tension and like, you know, leave a cliffhanger or something. Um, and yeah, they're just things that like if you're gonna write music for network television in particular, they just kind of come with the package. So
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I appreciate that there are many other approaches being taken and being kind of like accepted as well. And one thing that I really appreciated during the show was like a lot of times before when you come back from commercials, you always had to had a little stinger or something to let the audience know it's like, hey, the show's back on, come sit on the couch
Always.
again, you know.
Yes.
Um,
Bam.
I'm just like, I'm being thrown back into my childhood right now, hearing all
yeah,
of those. Oh
but
my
you
god, you're
know,
right.
fortunately now like people are more open to just like playing things dry and letting the writing and the performances just kind of speak for themselves and that's something that like I really
Ooh.
appreciate because I'm like for uh, it's kind of odd because I feel like as a composer, I'm always looking for where not to compose. Like I
That's a good
always try
point.
to be like this that like my job is to stay out of the way as much as possible and then just like reinforce only when needed.
Mm.
And it's really hard to always win those battles, especially a lot of times if you're coming on early on during the edits, like editors or even directors will just throw music at it because they don't feel it's fully working how they're wanting it to. And then they just kind of get attached to the idea of having music there. And even if they get it to a place where the edit works by itself, and you're like, you don't really need music here. All the information the audience needs is right here. They're so used to hearing it with music that it would be hard
Yeah.
to for them, the creators, to like hear it without.
Right.
Um, but I always like advocate for less music in terms,
Hmm.
just because I feel like it's so easy to get so manipulative too with the music, and
That
then
is
you
so true.
like let the the audience is usually like super smart, and they if they're paying attention, which is the audience that you want to be watching the
Mm-hmm.
show, it's like they don't need so many music cues to let them know what's going on.
Dang.
um
That's a
so
conversation we often have when we're watching things is, oh, they think we're stupid. Like, they really don't think we
yeah.
understand what's going on here.
Right.
That's so funny. Well, I appreciate that I know
Yeah.
you're back there working behind the scenes, you know.
Pushing for minimalism.
Yeah. Because you're right. Like,
Yeah,
if the music is really standing out that much, or if it's reinforcing too much, it really takes you out of what the point of, pulling you into that moment would be. So,
yeah,
yeah.
I hear you
yeah.
though. I
But I
mean,
mean,
even with doing pop music, like you,
Mm.
I oftentimes will find myself, trying to get away with less. Like it's
mhm,
like
Well, like you
usually.
said, it's really easy to add more when you feel like this will solve whatever's wrong with this right now.
right, right.
Yeah, to
More,
just
more,
keep
more.
piling sound until it's like a cacophony, and then you're like, well, now, like, I've lost.
You've lost the moment, yeah.
Well,
it,
and I'm
it,
I'm
it feeling
currently kind of
cool.
struggling with that a little bit because I'm right now I'm working on my first video game, which is like a whole different experience as
Oh,
well.
Mm.
wow.
And the difference, the main difference I'm finding to that, also there's a whole creative difference in terms of how you approach the music making of it, and the blocks and the loops and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But also it's like the one note I've I've gotten most is that it needs to be busier. And I like I said, I'm used to just
Interesting.
like, and the reason being that with video games you need to have the flexibility of increasing or decreasing intensity. So it's like the more layers you throw in initially, I guess the more combinations you can do later on. So it doesn't feel repetitive when it loops around and all that stuff.
Oh,
But
yes.
I'm working on it with everything stacked at the same time.
Yeah.
So when I'm like writing it, I was like, oh my gosh, can this take one more layer? It's about to pop. Um, so
Wow.
it's hard to think creatively like that and be like, it's fine. It's not actually going to be used like this, I hope, in terms of like as busy as it is. Um, but then it's cool because then you get like the team then sends you back like different layers of intensity using the stems that you sent them, and it's like, oh, it sounds like video game now. That's cool.
Oh,
Like I can imagine a player playing to this now. Um,
that's
whereas
wild.
initially it was like, oh, this is so busy. But
Mm.
yeah,
Oh, I just learned something new. That's so cool. That
Yeah,
makes a
that's
lot
a.
of sense, though. Hmm.
yeah,
That's like counterintuitive. That's so interesting. To have to that's like, as a creative person, I feel like we're kind of always looking for like new edges or new challenges or new like spaces that we haven't conquered yet, and that's definitely a place that I wouldn't go intentionally myself.
yeah. The funny thing was like I've never been like a hardcore gamer or particularly interested in like scoring video games or anything like that. The job just kind of like came out of the blue where my agents were like, "Hey, we're talking with this company and they have your music in as temp on their game, and they like it, so they want to meet with you." And I was like, "Okay." And
That's amazing.
it's like a triple A company, so I was like, and they know I've never done a game before.
Wow.
uh, and
That's awesome.
um so yeah, I mean, it's we're still very early on, so here's hoping I make it through the finish line
Okay,
for the rest
okay.
of the year.
Understood,
um
understood.
but uh but yeah, it's definitely like, now I feel like I've gotten kind of the groove of it. I'm like, okay, yeah, this I can do this. But at first it was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. am I going to be able to, just because it's like a very different approach to like, I'm so
Yeah.
used to like scoring things linearly and I'm given a picture and you're like, hey, here's the scene. This is what we want. Just go,
Hmm.
versus being more conceptual of like, well, the game and this part, we're doing this, but we don't quite have it yet. So just write some music and then we'll try it out in the system and see how it works and all that stuff. So,
That is
Wow.
so different. Yeah.
yeah,
Holy cow. Well,
it's cool.
that's
I mean,
exciting.
yeah, and I mean it's all very synth heavy too. So it's
I
a
was gonna
lot of
say what's at play for this,
yeah,
project.
just basically a lot of Buchla stuff and a lot of Eurorack stuff, a lot of Voyager stuff. Um, yeah, just a lot of
That's
fun
really
stuff.
awesome.
Wow, yeah. So many nuggets for our rewatchers when we put this on YouTube. So excited, this is a great resource, and for people who are interested in getting into that line of work. So thanks for providing all that information.
Yeah,
Really, really
yeah.
fun
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, that's all new
Yeah.
to us because we're like we like video games. We haven't spent as much time with them as we have with music, so I don't feel as like versed in that as I would, like watching movies and thinking about soundtracks and thinking about how
Yeah.
the music is like a character and analyzing it from that standpoint in terms of a story that's like fixed, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind
Yeah.
of like what you were saying before with video games, like the music is a different type of interaction that you're having.
Yeah. I mean, it's
As
interactive and needs to
yeah.
be adaptive and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And like your relationship to it as the person playing the game versus somebody watching
Right. And
something.
it's really funny too because the player can also just mute the music and put whatever music they want. So then it's
Exactly.
like,
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something too, like if they do listen to it, like it becomes part of the experience they're having,
for sure.
all the
Yeah.
different times they're playing, and I think
Yeah.
that's really fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you guys how did your Buchla journey begin?
Um,
Oh, turning the tables. I love it.
it's definitely one that we
I'll let you take
have
this.
answered before here, probably a few times. But
Okay, sorry.
no, no, no. But happy,
Do not
happy
apologize.
to do it. I'm more so apologizing for the fact that there's probably lots of people that have heard this story a lot by now, and we were just talking about the other day
Oh my
about
gosh, I was just saying that. Like, why?
there's like
Sometimes people will tell you the same story as though they've not told you for like the eighth
there's
time. At like the eighth point, I'm like, do they know who I am? Like,
there's a characteristic.
I do. I've heard you say this so many times, but this is funny because we are obviously those people.
But that
That's what
proves
we're talking
that
about.
I wouldn't
Oh,
want to
that
be
you
that
would.
type
Okay.
of person
All right.
naturally.
This is a conversation for later. Okay.
Anyway.
Oh, Bardic is saying that he's never heard your Buchla origin story, so.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go.
Well,
There you
for Bardic and Renee, and certainly not Jacqueline.
I never get tired of it.
It all started from the Alex Tyson video about the music easel. I don't know
Charles
if you've
Cohen.
seen that with Charles Cohen.
Yeah.
From like 2008 or something. It's pretty old at this point. And I just was like, I was smitten from just watching that video. It just totally.
It does something to you. It's
I
hypnotizing.
remember showing it to Jacqueline, and normally this would like be off limits of something that I would share or even think that Jacqueline would give a crap about. And I just like I felt so but I felt so compelled. I was like this I'm gonna show you this synth video.
The passion was real. It was there.
I built up the courage to show Jacqueline the synth video.
Oh yeah, and I was immediately like, oh, of course, yes.
And so I was like, I'm gonna find one of these, like before the
I gave you the green light. I was like, you are correct.
Before
Go.
the reissue existed, before I knew anything about clones, I was just like thought I was gonna go find a Buchla music easel. And then I came to learn that there was like 30 of them in the world, maybe. Like, if that, or there was like something like a small, very small number created in the first place.
Ooh, we
and
should
then
print
like
that up.
even less available, like in working condition now.
Working condition, that's the real
operable, yeah. And so I gave up on that dream pretty easily, but then they announced the reissue, like Buchla did, like very shortly after I had pretty much
figured. It was like a year later.
I'd already given up on it, like at that point, but like I was super happy to know
was
that
it
they
at
were
NAMM?
gonna...
Did you see it at NAMM?
No, it was just whenever they announced it.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably announced at NAMM. I don't know when it was announced,
okay.
But I just heard
about it.
Why
do I have
a
memory of you being at NAMM?
Because I went to NAMM
and seeing the
plenty of times. I saw Todd demo it after it was released.
Oh, at NAMM.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's real. Okay, cool.
After it came out, but that's not like where I discovered it. I mean, I definitely knew about it and had pre-ordered one. Like,
you already had one at that point. Or
I had one.
You had one at that point.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I pretty much got it when it came out. Like when they first started shipping easel, I got one, and it was based off of that video. And from there, actually, since
that didn't seem real to me. You were like, "Look at this amazing thing," and I was like, "That's so cool." And you're like, "Yeah, you can't get any." And then like you were like, "But now you can." And I'm like, "What? How is this possible? How did this happen? What timing?"
And so I kind of sat on it and like just toyed around with it, like, because we were doing a lot of stuff with our band at the time and like touring a lot, and like so I didn't have a lot of time with it, and so we finally. I felt like I wood shopped enough with it to where we started making a bunch of music with it.
We did include it on that first album, though. We were just so in love. We were like, it has to be involved in everything we're doing. I don't care how.
Nice.
But
we made like a double album and, of material with it.
A lot of easel.
And then eventually I sold it.
That opened the door to everything else.
And that led to me getting a 200, building a 200 system. I built some of the modules myself. There's a few of them that I've like gotten in trades that I don't know who built them. Like I think maybe one of them was built by Roman, the 259, because it has like a tag on it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Like I think it was sold to the person I bought it from built.
Deep Buchla talk now.
I really like the way it sounds. Like that, my 259 I feel like sounds pretty good to me. And then I have a Dunnington Audio 258D, which I built and I really like. And 285, 245, and I don't know, some other modules. I'm not gonna like go through the entire system, but yeah,
because it's always changing. You mean?
Yeah.
It hasn't changed in a while. Yeah.
And why did you sell the easel in the first place?
Just because I wanted to expand into the 200 and like really go for it and like get a bigger case and everything. Like that was the only way that I was gonna.
What was the like
upscale, if you will,
thing that was like, no, I must expand? Well, I know at one point you had the easel in a side case. You had like two. You had both. You were like starting to build.
Because I started to experiment with building stuff.
And then you were like, no, I just need like one giant easel that I like.
Basically, yeah. I mean, my system is inspired by the easel heavily. Like, I would say that it's almost like a broken out easel for the most part. Like, I have...
Like a modular easel instead of a semi-modular easel.
There you go.
Yeah, literally every element in here, besides the 277 delay and the 297, every other module in my system is incorporated into the easel somehow. You know what I mean? So it's really just a easel with a bunch more knobs and CV outs, which is actually really cool and I think works exactly the way that I would want it to.
Well, right, because we were talking earlier about an instrument that's for performance versus composing, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I would say when you were talking about that, I was like, oh, wow, right? I've been in such a what I do needs to be for performing for so long now that that like shook me out of it. It's like, oh yeah, like that wouldn't make sense if you so we're always having this debate of like wanting to be able to have 32 track DAW sessions versus the immediacy and the feeling you get of like DAW-less jamming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like wanting to have like a massive compound where we can have all of those things, like just we don't have to like change stuff. It's just always set up all the time for everything.
Yeah, yeah.
But then I'd also want like 2 brains and like 4 arms, and it gets out of control.
Oh man,
That's funny.
But it's cool, like when you're working on projects, are you able to have like this focus of these projects are pretty massive and that's all you have to work on during that time, and then are you taking time to shift into just creative mode for yourself, and like how do you juggle all of that?
There's no creative mode for myself only exists when I'm reading a manual. For, um, yeah, I mean, I have to be very selective um, with how I dedicate my time, particularly just because like the work element, takes up like your regular work day
Sure.
kind of thing, and
mm-hmm.
oftentimes, depending on the schedule, takes over everything else, and it's like you're literally just like working, eating, and sleeping, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when not, um, I just feel like just like with any, I mean, if you're somebody who doesn't do music for work and you just do a regular job and all day you're thinking about like I want to get home and do music,
Mm-hmm.
you have all this pent up energy, and when you get home, sometimes you make music, but other times you're also too tired
Yeah,
from your
exactly.
regular day to think about making music.
That was me for
Now
many
think
years.
Yeah.
right. And so then now think about it from a perspective of like your actual workday is making music. Then when you get home, what energy do you have left to keep making music?
Yeah.
um, even if for yourself, for me at least creatively, in order to be, I don't want to say like as good as I want to be because it's not like egotistical about me, but it's like if I want to be as respectful to the people hiring me
Mm-hmm.
in terms of giving it my all, I need to put all my creative energy into the workday.
Yeah.
Um,
mm-hmm.
so that then when I'm not working, it's really more so about if I do have any energy to interact with instruments, it's usually like, okay, I got this new module. I haven't quite figured it out. Let me look at the documentation and start exploring it. And
Mm-hmm.
then a jam comes out of that, and that satisfies my personal creative thing
Totally.
because it doesn't have to be guided by any rules or direction from anybody else. I'm just jamming.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very rare unless I'm on some kind of break where I don't have work and I'm like jobless for a few months or something. Then I get to like just have fun. But it's very rare that and that's part of why I don't have any sort of like aspirations as in like an artist or to like make a name for myself making albums or anything other than just writing music for visual media
Mm-hmm.
because that's just kind of like my job and what fulfills me creatively. And fortunately, I've gotten to a place where like people hire me to do the music that I love making. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like I'm having to just write. I mean, no diss, but it's not like I'm having to like write music for commercials or for children's programming or
Yeah.
things like that. I'm getting to do like what I love doing, which is usually like dark and moody stuff.
Hell yeah.
Or like, I also love doing like guitar bass, like Latino sounding stuff. And so I've managed to position myself in a place where like the marriage of those two has opened enough doors to keep me going and satisfy me both creatively and financially to be able to just live off of it and support my family, which is also a new aspect of like considerations and priorities and how I spend my time and efforts and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. Wow. Well, congratulations. I'm so happy to hear that you're at that place. in life. That sounds magical.
Yeah, and it definitely comes through, in the
Mm.
music. Like I feel like when I listen to that score, I'm just, like listening, especially if like you follow a bunch of synth accounts on social media. I just feel I'm like listening to someone getting to do this like glorious, like modular synth experiment of sound and like, it being used, for such dramatic effect and everything. It's just really cool to listen to and to see in action.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that.
It's very inspiring to the community, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks. Well, like I said, I mean, one of my favorite things, and that was one of the things that I think pulled me even further into the rabbit hole of synthesis and modular and stuff, was that as soon as I started getting into it, I started building this community, like not building, but like in my personal life,
Mm-hmm.
building a community of fellow synth nerds who I didn't know before and were suddenly so supportive, even if we were miles away, just on Instagram or whatever, or on YouTube. And it was very cool. And also from the manufacturing standpoint, to see all these companies, big and small, just be so involved
Yeah.
in the communities and the people that they're making products for. And that played a huge role in me wanting to like invest more in it and kind of like stick to it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
it's very cool that now I'm in a place where I get to hire those friends that I've made and be like, hey, I'm tied on a schedule here and I need some sounds, I'll pay you however much and give me a few loops that I can use,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's cool to have that network, at hand, I would assume.
Right? We talk about that obviously a lot, like this whole online Synth Friends thing, this web of like ways that we've all found each other from all over the world. And there's
yeah.
like this shared understanding and language beyond just, being on the internet or being in a sense that like there seems to be a genuine like shared passion and desire to have like authentic connections with people beyond just like
Mhm.
influencer culture or whatever that is.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just like we're also excited to just be able to have this way to connect rather than
Hmm.
like it has to yield us something or whatever. It's like we'd all be doing this anyway. How cool is it that we're not just isolated completely?
Right,
Because it's such an
right, right.
isolating,
Yeah.
Can be.
existence.
Yeah.
Which, we all, tend to want to be that way anyway. But, every once in a while you want to poke your head out and like have somebody be there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and even just coffee hangs.
Oh, sure.
Yesterday, I had coffee with this guy Benjamin Howell, who I said I hired for the show, and it's just so cool to just have coffee and nerd out and
Mm-hmm.
you know to get out of the bubble for a little bit while still talking about things that are in the bubble and like
Yes.
be equally excited about them.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well,
Well,
we definitely, used to live in Los Angeles,
oh,
which
you
we
just
didn't
read my mind.
talk about much, but we miss it a lot. It's like the one of the few places that we've lived that we actually like could really see ourselves maybe moving back to someday.
We lived there for a long time, like the longest
Yeah, we lived
we've
there
ever
for
lived
about
anywhere.
6 years,
Nice.
from starting in 2009.
Which, is like in LA years, that's a lot of time. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. I'm coming up on November. It'll be a decade since I've been here, and it feels like forever. Yeah,
Wow.
feels like forever.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So, okay, so
We had a
yep,
little overlap
a short overlap, but that's like
That's
right
true.
when we
Yeah, we
left.
probably
Yeah,
would have.
by a
Yeah.
year.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
So you got the easel and bounced.
Pretty
Exactly.
much. Yeah, I did, and it's funny that you say that because I remember like
That was
literally.
one of the hardest things was like leaving not just the community, but like the fact that there's a community and an industry there means that there's like these old repair techs,
Mm-hmm.
you know, these
Yeah.
one-off places, these old dudes who've just been like working on this equipment since it came
Well,
out.
it's funny. It's funny that you say that because like I recently got not recently, about a year or so ago, recently, I got a 250 AD too,
Oh,
and for some reason it will not track like the gray thing. Just it's just not. And when I try to calibrate it, it just goes haywire as soon as I touch the thing. Anyway, I somehow ended up at Mike Peake's house and he was looking at my 258 and I just, from Modwig, I remember, I recognized his name and, as a builder and all that stuff. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's so cool. That's just right here around the corner.
Wild.
Yeah, he's somebody that has done some work for me as well. So, but I did it by way of mail. But
right.
He's a great tech.
Yeah, but that's the magic of LA is like someone will just be down the street and you're like, whoa.
It is.
I was reminiscing on that, like when we first moved there and like the era that we were there. I was like thinking back on how many people I would just run into from my childhood.
I was not expecting you to say that.
Like, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was like, multiple times I ran into people from my childhood who I only knew for a brief time, way on the East Coast, right? Like, it's just such a melting pot. You never know who you're going to run into. Every day,
really
like my mind would be blown. I'd be like, this person from middle school is doing this gig I'm doing, like whatever. It's just so random. And I'm from a very, very small place, very far from LA. So it's just like wild.
It's just one of those places that,
everybody ends up there someday.
Attracts, people from all over for a very specific reason of you want to be around the entertainment industry usually.
Yeah.
It's a fun place. I don't know. I know I was gonna say it's a fun place. We miss the sunshine, but I think it's like pouring rain right now.
It's been terrible for like the past month or something, and I don't know what's happening. It's like there was a tornado yesterday somewhere, and it was like, what is happening?
I saw in the Bay Area actually there was I think there was a pretty serious tornado. Yeah.
That's
I don't know.
crazy.
I didn't know it was happening in LA as well, but that makes sense.
That's so weird to me because we had these like crazy like summer thunderstorms the past couple days. And that's like weird to me that we're having like that kind of weather and we're like all on the other side of the mountains from LA, but it's like the similar type of weird kind of normally this time of year is there this kind of weather? I don't know. I try not to think about it too much, not to be too dark about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was. I live in Burbank, and a few weeks ago, like you just look up the hill and there was snow on the mountains, and it was like, what is happening?
Right.
So yeah, it's a little scary. Hopefully it goes away and it's not like a permanent thing or a thing that gets worse, but
yeah I know what you mean. We're always thinking about that too. We're like, okay, how much more
yeah,
2 degrees.
It does feel accelerating, but I know.
So we'll see what happens when the heat turns on, and then it's the other way around.
Exactly. I was gonna say, I'm used to like when you are especially in Burbank and you look up at the mountains, usually you're seeing smoke.
Right. Yeah.
That's my memory of being like, things are on fire. How odd. And you can see it.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, oh my gosh. Yeah. It's so easy. It's so easy to get sucked into that. And so that's why we enjoy so much having music in our lives to talk about and bond over. And this is why I think the power of this community is so intense and so beautiful and like ever evolving, is because like everyone brings their own story, their own interpretation, their own experience with these instruments to the table. So like I never get tired of talking to people about this.
Surfing on sine waves.
Yeah. It never tires, it never gets old, it never feels like the same old thing.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
That's our love for, having just this point of reference to start from, because like music is such a vast, endless ocean of options and styles. So, like, not everyone may have the same sound or style or even genre, but we're all, like, interested in electronic elements for this kind of similar reason, it seems, of, like, wanting to be able to expand beyond the, like, 2D plane of,
Right, traditional instruments and whatnot. Yeah.
Traditional instruments.
And even using, like, acoustic instruments or non-traditional sound sources. Excuse me.
Yeah.
In a way that you
Well,
might think of from electronic music.
And processing through the modular, like René
Yeah.
does, like
Yeah.
making
Well,
more electroacoustic sounds than.
right. Yeah. And someone who like I'm like hugely inspired by and was fortunate also to hire on a project is Sarah Bell Reed, and what what she does with the trumpet and all
Oh
that kind
yeah,
of stuff.
that's a great reference.
Synth Friend Bell Reed.
Yeah. Sarah is doing
Yeah.
really cool things all the time, and
Yeah, I took her her course,
oh,
like
Oh,
the
okay.
learning sound and
sweet.
synthesis thing. Yeah, I took
Yes.
it. I
You're the
think in the
second
fall.
alumni or
I know. A lot of alumnus out there from Sarah
Yeah.
Bell Reed.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I mean, I'm still watching videos from it because it's like there's just so many resources in there that for me
Right.
it was kind of hard to get through it during the time when the cohort was actually happening. So I'm still like going through master classes, and I was watching one with Suzanne Chiani actually, like one of the, because the cool thing about it too is that like she does master classes during the cohort,
Mm-hmm.
but then they go into like a vault. So if you sign on for a specific package, I think it was the VIP package or something, you get access to all the previous master classes from the previous cohorts and stuff. So there's like so many master classes that I'm like looking forward to. And it's just like a Zoom call with the people that were participating that year, but it's just so insightful. And
Oh wow.
just the chats with Sarah herself, like
Mm-hmm.
during the cohort, were always just like so inspiring. And yeah, I just feel like her approach to music making in general is very like just raw and to the core of like who you are and how you approach that and what speaks to you and all that stuff. Highly recommended, just to say.
Yes, shout out. No, we had her on and felt exactly the same way about everything you're saying. So agreed. It's very cool that that's being fostered in that way. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Have we gone over time?
Oh, we may have. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Sarah is the best. Synth Todd agrees. I was going to say, if anybody has any questions, we do want to start wrapping this up because, we could just keep going and going and going and going. But if there's any burning questions, throw them in the chat. And we're going to make sure everybody knows to... here's the links that we pulled for you. So we've got your main website, your Instagram, the streaming links for the soundtrack to the Watchful Eye, and then your personal artist Spotify.
Cool. Yeah.
Did we miss anything?
Is there going to be a physical copy of the score coming out?
No. No, the score, I was lucky enough that the score was put out by Hollywood Records, which they're like a huge label, but
that's awesome.
Their main focus is on artists, not, they do soundtrack, like they put out like the Avatar soundtrack and like huge soundtracks too, but like usually print nowadays is like very selective, and it has to do a lot with like the interest of the project itself versus just the music, so it's like,
yes,
sure, maybe the Avatar soundtrack would, I don't know if it got a vinyl press or like an actual physical copy or not, I don't know, but that would have been the thing you'd think, or like things like that, not our little Freeform show.
It's not the 70s. We don't just press everything to vinyl.
Right.
Yeah, it would have been cool. I'm still waiting for an actual poster of the show. We'll see if they're able to get it to me, because I like to feel like I have the one from the Amazon movie right there.
That movie is called Emergency. If you guys haven't seen that movie is really good, and the music is amazing.
Oh, thank
Obviously.
you. And then I have that empty wall there.
Oh, the wall!
The Watchful Eye poster.
It's gonna be watching over you.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Fun, not so fun fact, whatever. I got into Buchla because of the Arturia plugin for the easel.
Oh, yeah. And sorry for not asking that. That's a great question.
I know, right?
That's really cool. So you got into it by way of the plugin.
Right. Yeah, because I was using the plugin
that makes sense.
A lot, and I was like, I really want to get my hands on this thing, like the physical thing. And then there was nothing. And then, like you're saying, a few months later or something, I think they announced the easel command, and I was like, okay, it's half of it.
That
I'll
was an
take
There you
exciting
go.
moment, though. Yeah, we were
Yeah.
stoked about
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so then waiting forever, and then finally now the 218 came out, and so I got it, and I checked in with Peter, being like, "Hey, so about that case," and they were like, "We don't know," and it was like, "All right," and then I found Luther and his case, and I was like, "All right, yeah, this
Hmm.
will do just fine."
Nice. Ooh, it's beautiful.
And I'm very happy. Yeah, I'm very happy with Luther's case, and
Thank you for
but
answering my
so
questions about the 218 EV3, by the way. I did end up getting it, and
nice.
it does do all the stuff that I asked and that we, were thinking about. And so, I'm very
That's
happy with
awesome.
it. It, what can I say? They did it
That's
right.
cool.
Joel got it right.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm very, my favorite thing about it, and the reason I had been holding off on buying a used one of the V2s or getting a clone or anything was because I I'm all about syncing stuff, just like in because
Mm-hmm.
I work mainly on my DAW. And so
Yes.
it's like an
Same.
arpeggiator without a sync input is no good to me. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
it's good to
Mm-hmm.
me if I want to just go like, but if
No.
I want to like actually
No.
like to have to like ear dial in the rate by ear, which is not going to work. So as soon as I saw that had an input for the arpeggiator, it was like, okay, this
Game
is
over. Yeah.
it. Time to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and I've been very happy with it. Like I just took it out and I put it on the big thing because I was exploring the Shiani cookbook and I was gonna start getting
Nice.
through it.
Mm-hmm.
But then as soon as I tried sending a sequence into the MARF through the external inputs, it was like wah, wah. Because the old firmware with the slew and all that stuff. So then I hit Adam up and I was like, hey, can you update this for me? And so I just sent it out. Um, but yeah, I'm excited. And that's the thing. It's like it's fun to have the Luther case too, to be able to like switch configurations. And like I think I'm always going to keep the 208C on the Luther
Mm.
case, but then I may switch between having the 218 or just like taking other modules out. And like right now I have a 216 and the Clouds version from 1979,
Mm-hmm.
the CMP. Um
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, the CMP. Got you. So not the
yeah,
full-sized one. I have the
right, just the
SMP.
one. Yeah, yeah. No, I just got the CMP because then that way I have the 216 and the CMP, which make up the 4U, and then the easel on top. So
Perfect.
just exploring different things, and like that's my fun thing. Like I'll take that case home, and um, I think Kyle is asking something here about the 218
That's
pulses
a
not
question
advancing the mark.
for you, my friend, because
Yeah.
I do not have a
Yeah,
Marv.
I don't. Yeah, I think they should. I don't know that I got to try it. The issue that I was having with it was that as soon as I sent, you know, a sequence, I think I was programming my sequences on my HOC from Northern Light Modular, my
Mm-hmm.
like the ornament and crime, because I don't have a 245.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I was sending them into the external inputs, the sequences were just getting destroyed in terms of like slew, and then transposition was sending the voltages to all sorts of places. Um,
Gotcha. I have a 245 and my 218E V3 does not advance my 245, but that isn't like so much of a surprise
oh,
because the the other one didn't either, the older one. So
hmm,
Kyle is actually kind of familiar with my my
yeah,
trials there, but my trick is just I'll just like run a pulse into the 281 and then I mean
right, right,
yeah 281
yeah,
was and just get a pulse off there instead.
yeah.
But yeah, for some
You know
reason
something?
like I think it's just in the arpeggiator mode too that it doesn't do it. Like so, I would say if you do
Mm,
run any issues advancing the Marf,
mm,
try it without the arpeggiator on, and it may work that way. But then it may
yeah,
not be
yeah.
useful.
Maybe they're too
Mm.
close together or
It
something.
like reads it as a sustain. I think you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
I've noticed
Huh.
that like if I run the arpeggiator pulse out and just like get a read on the pulse, like it's just like a sustained pulse. So that's probably why it doesn't advance the 245 and may not advance the Morph. But like I said, I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I had a weird thing with my 281s where I recently got a 244 from Sputnik, that has like the clock dividers and like an ASR and a bunch of other stuff.
Oh yeah, the
And
toolbox or whatever. Mm-hmm.
it's I mean, it has a sequential switch, it has a pulse divider, an analog shift register.
That's a cool
Anyway.
module. I definitely wanted that for a while in one of my systems.
This is what we're really here for. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good utility module.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing was that for both of my 281s, and one of them was built by Adam, the other one I think I bought it used, I don't know. But for some reason, only channels 1 and 3 would read the pulse on the input, and channels 2 and 4 or B and D, whatever, would not. And I was like, what is that about? And it was just odd to me that both were doing the same thing and only on 2 of the channels. Anyway, Buchla.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of just encompassed into the spirit of owning a Buchla. There's going to be some things that are working, strangely. Like, I think it's just inevitable.
Yeah.
It feels right, like.
Right. Yeah, it's part of the appeal, the quirkiness.
Yeah. It's part of the charm,
Exactly. Definitely.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like having a classic car that you got to know like the trick to start. You know what I mean? Like
you got to hit it 2 times here and 1 time here, then you press the clutch and then you turn the key in.
Yeah.
That is so true.
Like where there's a section in my 266 where it's the QRV section is like the 2 elements are swapped, the 2 sections are swapped, and I just have to remember that. But if you're using my system, like you're gonna be sending the wrong CVs if you didn't know that.
Oh wow, that is just
funny.
like it. Okay,
keep that in mind.
I see a question that is about panning, which is one of your favorite things.
Oh yeah.
So
I feel
we'll throw this out.
Panning is so underrated.
Is there a multi-channel pan processor on the market?
Well, the 207
different rates. Oh,
has
what
2
is it?
channels of panning, but
Well, so first of all, I mean,
This is a
what
big
format
question.
are we talking about? Are we talking Buchla, Eurorack, like?
that's a good point.
And then what do we mean by multi-channel pan? Are we talking about multi-outputs more than stereo, or just
I think
like
multi-outputs, right?
And
if
then
you want
are
to
we
input
talking about
various and Ooh, I love
are we talking about
breakdown.
panning with CV over it, or just hand panning, set and forget?
There's a lot of variables.
Yes.
Yeah. But I'm thinking 227 is in that realm, right?
Yeah, that would give you quad and.
Okay, Todd says 227.
Yeah,
277 and 2.
No, I think he meant 227.
Yeah,
I think
227 and that's just that's the one. And then 207 will give you stereo panning.
I'm happy with 2 207s.
Oh, you have 2 207s. That's
Here we go.
There you go.
That's actually like what preamp version do you have?
I do not know. One of them, I feel, I don't know. I think one of them is like a V1, like a Roman version.
So it probably has the
Very
transformer.
old.
Well, there's one that they made with the transformer, and then they made one that was like an IC chip, I think, instead.
Adam built me the other one with just like one of the latest SA modular kits. So
I think those have transformers as well. They're probably both transformer. That's a really good sounding pre. I've definitely ran guitar into that thing and other stuff. It's a really good underrated preamp, I think.
Yeah, all I've done is run my vocals through it.
There you go.
So far, and but it was to like kind of destroy them with the ring modulator.
Like that's the best. Okay. I
they're
don't know
saying
if we're
like a
gonna
line
get.
six
Yeah.
tremolo pan. I don't know what a line six tremolo pan is, so I can't really help with that.
Oh, tremolo pan, like, uh, so something that changes the volume level and the panning at the same time, kind of thing, like almost like a rotary speaker, kind of a
This is a
simulator.
perfect example of what it's like to be like,
I mean,
what synth should I start with?
and I'm thinking of
You
ways.
know,
I'm like,
it's
well, I feel like you could make that patch. You know what I mean? Like, I could make
Yeah.
that happen. You know, like
Well, in
that
my world,
phenomenon.
this is like a 3 hour rabbit hole into the internet.
Right.
And then you're just like endlessly searching, and then you go on Modwig, and then it's like,
ooh, that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
It's the journey, right?
I would say like effects for me are kind of like something that I had a lot of at one point when I was playing a lot more guitar based music, and then I don't have much now, and that's kind of like my weak spot.
hmm,
So I've even
interesting.
considered maybe like joining like a guitar pedal like subscription service where I'm like constantly getting new stuff in, but not having to buy, you know, like
Yeah,
effects pedals just because like man they're really expensive these days.
Yeah, no joke.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I built a little mini pedal board for my easel case, um, with the approach of like performance in mind. Because similarly, I feel like now that I have the easel in its own case, I really want to kind of like study it as a performance instrument more so than just my studio life here.
Yes.
Um, and it was kind of tricky to think about what pedals to get. Todd was kind enough to sell me his right there, the
Ooh.
this one. Because I was looking for a looper to be able to clock the easel with, very, Cohen
That's the
inspired,
one.
obviously.
Oh
Um,
yeah, the 16-second delay.
so yeah, so
I've
yeah,
owned that as well. Very familiar with it. I don't own it at the moment, but I've had a bout with it. I used it with the
Yeah,
easel.
I was gonna say. What a
right, yeah,
pairing.
that's yeah, um, yeah.
But it was very
Anyway,
Charles Cohen inspired, I will say. Like
yeah, no,
I've already
same.
given that away, you know. So,
Oh,
you
it's true.
know, he was the jam for sure. So, R.I.P.
Oh, that's so
R.I.P.
fun. I know, right? I see Celluloid is here with us and saying they almost got the Black Easel by SA Modular. Sorry for your
Oh,
credit card shame.
the black easel. That looks really
It
cool. You know, like
does.
I've never
Yeah,
played with one. You know, obviously it probably doesn't affect the sound,
right, right.
but the aesthetic
It's a
is
very cool look. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, very intriguing. I've always wanted to see one in person. I guess is what I was trying to say.
Yeah. No, they definitely pull you in and it's like, yes, please take all my money. Okay, we're
Well,
getting
right.
okay.
Well, yeah.
Abhorrent. I think you need to jump into the Discord, Abhorrent, and we'll help you out there more. But to get the stereo feel on monosynth Slayer's a boss like the Pan Line 6. Okay. We appreciate the further clarification on this sort of puzzle that we have before us.
Sounds like it would really widen the signal. So cool tip.
Thinking about, well, they're looking for an answer to.
Oh,
This is the same person.
I thought that they were. They're asking if there's something like that in
Yeah,
Buchla.
yeah.
Yeah, I
In
think it'd be
Buchla
something,
or
in modular
this
period.
question has.
All right, we're gonna have to move away from that.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to you later in the Discord about that. We have lots of friends there who will be able to help you out with this question. But I love this question. If we have questions for Renee specifically, but I feel like we just have to say this has to be cut off at this point, like I said.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had to start heading out.
Yes,
But
thank you so much for chilling and hanging with us with the chat and just being
yeah,
cash. It's
Yeah,
nice to
no,
get to
this is
hang.
cool. Yeah, for sure. And it's cool to chat with people too, like on the chat. Yeah, part of
Yeah,
my
they're not here just to be like, what's your favorite food?
part. No, yeah. Well, I was just say like part of my Chiani thing was because I was watching Kyle's March series. So again, just very cool that the whole community is so devoted and passionate about exploring things and having fun with it.
Exactly. There's still that childlike approach. Like, even if we all are working in our various ways, projects, you know, it's like there's still this element of we want it to still be fun, and it's like at the core of it, that's what it's about. So thank you for hanging out with us and chatting.
Yeah.
Here, let me throw your links in here one more time, everybody. I know already you're going to go watch the Watchful Eye. You're going to listen to the soundtrack. You're going to follow René
That would be
on Instagram.
really great. Yeah, if you watched it, because I would love for there to be a season 2. But
hell yeah.
Oh, that was actually going to be a question of mine that I didn't squeeze in because of time, but like now you've answered it. That's encouraging.
Yeah, let's all watch it.
Well, I'm saying, yeah, I want there to be, so people have to watch it so that we do get a season 2.
We will watch it.
Yes,
we'll see.
It will be watched.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Definitely be chatting about it in our Discord, because we have like a movie night that we do on Saturdays. So we always talk about film and film scores and stuff like that. And electronic music usually is the center of that, but you know, not always.
That's
sometimes
cool.
Electroacoustic, sometimes it's library music. You know, old movies can have a lot of different things going on. Especially like Hitchcock type stuff too, which we haven't delved into yet. But yeah, everybody give support to René. I know you enjoyed this conversation, so you know, make sure you show up and, you know, do the, you know, the painful task of enjoying a TV show. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, thank you so much for showing us all your synth stuff. That was really, really fun. And just so glad we're connected. We always say, you know, now, you know, it's up to you. We don't have to be synth friends. But now after this conversation, we hope that we can be.
Of course.
Aw, that's so awesome. And I was just realizing that this is probably the synthiest conversation we've ever had.
Yeah, this is so nerdy, everybody. Thank you for hanging in there.
It came about so naturally, and like it's totally cool, and like no shade and everything, but like we really got into the synth realm more than we ever have on Synth Friends. Usually we're so like, you know, out here in left field, you know, like now we were
talk concepts. We covered
super
it all.
On topic is the way I see it.
Yeah, good job. So thank you. You facilitated our being on topic.
Next time we'll talk about Vactrals.
There we go. Oh. There we go. We're just getting started.
We'll keep it light, you know. Keep it light. Sorry, Europe. May not want to come to that stream.
Not the European problem with Vactrals. Oh my gosh, that's a whole other conversation to have. But yes. We're so grateful we got to make this time together, and we look forward to chatting again soon. And the other thing about Synth Friends is that if you have someone you want to recommend for us to connect with, that's how we kind of keep the chain going.
That's cool.
So we'll just put that there. And
is it on the spot or?
No, definitely not on the spot. No, you can like check with people and stuff, you know.
Oh, that's funny.
And so we'll continue the experience in the 2D realm, and hope to see you here again soon, you know, and be talking about season 2.
Yes, please.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right.
See you.
Bye.
All right, everyone. That was so cool. Oh, sorry. The music has returned.
The music.
I apologize. Thank you all for being here. Have a nice day, y'all. Oh, yes, Abhorrent. Thank you so much for coming and, like, asking that question and, like, putting that out there. I mean, obviously, you lit us up about panning, so that was really fun. We love talking about panning.
Plus, I'm now just super curious if there is anything else out there like that.
It's going to pop up. So somebody's going to see it now. Somebody's going to find it, and it's going to get dropped in that Discord. I just know it. But that was dope, everybody.
Keep it in the gear section, please.
Great commentary. I feel like we welcomed our guest very nicely, especially because we were off for a week and we felt really out of sorts. Oh my God. Obama's Weed Man 8-month sub. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Holy cow. I feel like we need a little
tunage for that. Little Buchla.
Thank you. That's so fun.
Way to brighten up our day.
That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you, friends. We, I think, are officially in our 1-year anniversary of streaming on Twitch. We haven't gotten like an official Twitch memo about it yet, but I can feel it coming.
Is right. Yeah.
Thank you for being here, Make Mistakes. I saw Killer Bee Relay Team and Easel Cat, and like I saw everybody, but I don't know how to interrupt people to say hello. I'm having a really hard time figuring out how to do that. So I hope you all know that I see you and love you and appreciate you, even if I can't shout you out in the moment. Yeah, I think I got it. It was
nice to see some familiar.
There are so many friends. We've missed you. It's weird. Handles. It's weird how long that week felt without streaming. It felt like 1,000 years.
It did feel like a really long time.
It's so weird. I feel so weird about that. But anyway, we're excited to be back. We're going to do a movie night on Saturday. Like I said, don't miss out on being in the Discord where you get to vote on the movies or talk about your gear questions or just hang out and get weird with us. We are working on
surfing.
A little surfing. We are working on something right now that we're getting ready to share with you very soon. So we are going to be just streaming on Saturday and probably not Sunday. We're trying to find the time in the ether to keep building this thing that we're building for you. So you heard it here first. We're building something for you and it's coming soon. Very, very soon. There's a lot of things.
Few things.
There's so many things going on, to be honest. I don't know how I'm keeping it together right now. This is kind of what I missed about streaming is that we get to just focus and just be here with you. Whereas the rest of the time we're spinning around doing 700 things, but just really excited that we got to hang out. This was really fun and inspiring as it always is. And it just reminded me why I do this. And that's always a really good feeling. So I'm excited to be doing movie night again. I don't know who's winning right now in the poll, but we'll...
H-Man.
Oh, it is? Oh, gosh. What have we gotten ourselves into?
Watching the H-Man.
So that's going to be something. Let's find a friend to raid, and then we shall continue.
Hey, Raiders.
Hey, Raiders. You're funny.
Where my Raiders at?
Where my Raiders at?
What
are we even saying? What are we even saying? I haven't done this in a while, so I feel like I forget how to find people.
Ladder Raiders.
I'm sorry.
Mount up.
Oh my goodness. Hopefully I can keep it together and get this replay out for everybody, but here we go. We got this. I got this. Bye both. Bye Abhorrent. See you in the Discord. I want to help you figure this thing out.
Take it easy.
Take it easy. Such a fun hang, everyone. So much love. Appreciate it. Appreciate the good vibes and the cool attitude that you bring to our streams. It means so much. We will see you on Saturday, and have a good rest of your week.
Adios.